an updated crawler from Redcat. This is the Gen 9. What's going on, everyone? Today we've got the newest release from Redcat. This is the Gen 9, an updated version of their crawler line, which was previously released under the Gen 8. And this is a substantially updated version with a number of new features and some new styling. Today, we're going to go over all of those features and we're going to try and get it out on the rocks and see how it does. The first thing you'll notice when you pull this out of the box is that it is now styled after a Scout 800 rather than the Scout 2 that the previous Gen 8 used. Scout 800 was released before the Scout 2 in the lineage of full-size Scouts. Of course, you'll see that this body is a topless design with this molded cage and a pretty nicely detailed interior that sits underneath of it. It does come with this new radio. It's got buttons to control channel 3 and channel 4 on top, and there's a dial underneath of this cover here that says channel 5 on it. Channel 3 is functional though, because now underneath of this body there's a functional 2-speed in there. The axles under this are updated. They're now being called the V3 axles. So we'll get into the details of a lot of these things here in a minute, but just trying to give you a broad overview. The body is now removed with a clipless design that does not rely on Velcro. So underneath of the front here, you've got a couple of easy twist tabs, knobs kind of type deal. And when you twist those towards the front of the truck, it hinges up nicely and then just comes off. This rear section is kind of a U clip, and it just drops down into an area around that back bumper area and goes down nicely. So no more Velcro and magnets, anything like that. This is a legitimate, firm, it self-centers, no trying to figure out exactly where it goes. It's a nice clipless body design. I really like that. The tires that come on here are licensed Interco M16 tires, and they're on a true beadlock wheel. It's ready out of the box to run a 2S or 3S LiPo, or of course nickel metal packs also. The chassis, for the most part, looks just like what you're used to seeing. The skid plate is smooth, no bulge in the bottom there, so it runs that same updated style. But beyond that, the only thing that I've changed as far as what you see here is that I did add this decal here because it comes with two really nice, large, pre-cut decal sheets to help you kind of detail this thing out further. It's got a bunch of different stripes you can add on this sheet depending on the style that you're after. It's got all of the states. They're not sized to work with each other, so you can't just like start making a map of the US, but either way, all of them are there. And again, all these stickers are pre-cut, so that's nice. And there's also some stickers to further detail out the interior, front floor mats, a rear area, some speaker pods, and then just some assorted, bumper sticker type things. That's kind of the broad overview. Let's get into a few of the details on some of those areas we discussed. We'll start by going back to some of the body details. Again, Scout 800 versus Scout 2. I have always liked Scout 800s much more than Scout 2s. I was never a big fan of Scout 2s, but the 800 is pretty close to me. This body is pretty good in most ways, but every once in a while you kind of catch it at an angle and the proportions can look a little odd. These Scout 800s in the real world are very small vehicles, so they do kind of have a tall side profile compared to their length. So when you scale it to a truck that's this size, it can look a little bit tall, and this suffers a little bit from that. They kept the pretty stock sized wheel openings, even though they run a large wheel and tire. And then the other thing is that it can look a little wide for a Scout 800 in comparison to some of those proportions. Again, in most angles, I feel like it looks pretty good. It's just every once in a while you kind of catch it from an angle, you're like, I don't know, it looks either too tall or even too short in some way, Overall, I still feel like they did a pretty good job there. Now, this is a 3-piece body. You've got the main portion of the body, which is the outer body panels and shell. Then this windshield portion is its own part. It goes down right on top of the cowl. The body itself stops right at the windshield, so you can actually kind of see between them a little bit, but It's not that bad. And then the interior tray, with the full depth interior that this thing has, it's its own separate Lexan piece completely. It fits down in there, it seams well, and just the fit of everything, pretty decent, looks nice. And the details that then go onto this body, I feel like they did a great job with. We've got a molded grill up here, you know, with the headlights, the center section, the whole deal there. We've got windshield wipers down here on the bottom of the cowl facing inwards towards each other, the full molded cage, and then inside the interior, you've got separately molded front bucket seats, a rear bench seat, and the dash is molded. And then of course you've got shifters, and you've got a 3-pedal molded piece there in the interior that looks really good. I don't know that I remember anyone doing a 3-pedal setup like that. Or maybe pedals in general on a stock out-of-the-box crawler. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if I've seen anyone do pedals like that. They did a great job there. The other detail that I like is that they've got the door handle and a manual window crank on the inside. I definitely cannot ever remember seeing a manual window crank added to the inside. So I thought that was pretty cool as well. We've got door handles on the outside. Going to the back, you've got taillights and reverse lights. Overall, the body detail done well. The bumpers are reasonably sized to protect the body, be full width without sticking way out there. And they're not like overly aggressive off-road style bumpers. They just look pretty reasonable and in there. I like that. It's not overboard, neither front or rear. So I think that that's a nice touch. Rock sliders are very simple. They protect the side of the body, and they're most of the length of the entire rocker. While the interior is nicely detailed, it's a little bit odd on some of the scaling of it. Again, these were pretty small vehicles, so the bucket seats were actually really close together, and these are just they're far too small for the size of this truck, but you know, if it's trying to be scaled accurately to the body, but trying to scale it so that action figures or dolls or whatever you want to call it fit in there, you know, you're gonna have to do a legendectomy, but I think that you'll still be able to put somebody in there if that's a goal of yours. With turning the front body mount knob so that you can rotate the body up and lift it off, you can see a little bit of the structure underneath of the body that was added for that. The piece back here is kind of what supports the body and the mounting for when it goes onto the back. There's also some structure that goes up and around to help support how the cage and how that holds the interior in and connects it to this whole structure. Up front, we have a couple small details for the LED ready headlights. Again, the taillights are also LED ready, and that front body mount clipless system. Another thing to note is that on the box, it does show that the dash is LED ready as well. You will have to remove the dash from the body to be able to install that, but it looks like it's just a couple of screws. Let's set the body aside and talk about some of the details of the chassis now. This chassis will look very familiar in many ways. I think a lot of the parts are the same from the previous Gen 8, but there has definitely been some updates as well. The most notable update when you're looking under here is going to be the 2-speed with this micro servo here and this long shift linkage that goes up to the new 2-speed area. Now this is still a divorced transmission transfer case setup, but the separation between the two is just a little bit shorter now. I did test this 2-speed here on the bench with it lifted up off of its tires and using the remote with the channel 3 shifting button on top there. And it doesn't like to shift while under power. You kind of need to shift while you're, either stopped or just barely moving, and then it seems to kind of roll into place just fine. But that's when it's on the bench up in the air. Maybe that will be a little bit different when it's out on the rocks. We'll see. The rest of the configuration, as far as like the servo position, motor, transmission mount, transfer case, and this battery tray, all very similar to what you've seen before. We do have what looks like a Hobbywing 1060 ESC here. Another thing that I did change is that this does ship with a Dean's plug. I changed it over to an XT60 to match the batteries that I run. So Dean's plug is what you need, or get an adapter, prepare to change it in case you run something different like I do. Almost all of the rod end mounting positions on this are in double shear, meaning that there's support on both sides of the rod end where it's attached, or the pivot ball specifically. Some of them do look a little thin as far as the support that they have. The link positions will probably be okay because it's got a decent amount of support there. The knuckles do look a little thin on the steering area. And the panhard mount is still in single shear and just a large plastic piece that hangs down. The rod ends on this are still of the smaller variety. They're not beefed up like we see on most other crawlers right now. They're still kind of like that M3 size, but as you upgrade down the road, that's something that you can probably fix without too much hassle. The axles are where we've seen some other updates. The front axle being the most notable to me. It's now a one-piece housing rather than having these separate C's where everything bolts together and bolts on to try and add some strength there. The other thing that they've done now is that it uses universal style axle shafts rather than CVD style. So that should be stronger and allow you to get more steering in the end. One thing I definitely would have liked to see on the update of these axles is that they would have added some caster. These axles have zero caster, meaning that the C-hub is perpendicular to the output of the pinion. Most portal axles that are similar to this have anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees of front caster, which can greatly aid in steering ability and can help in performance of a lot of areas with these trucks. I would have liked to have seen them update to that. The only other thing that I noticed with that is that the rear pinion angle is actually pointed down a little bit rather than flat or even up just a hair. It's just a few degrees downward, which was a little odd, but probably just something you yourself could easily tune out of it with a simple link adjustment once you get it. If it's been quite some time since you looked at the Redcat crawlers, they did get that skid plate smoothed out, so nice to see that there. We've got a cast metal servo horn bonus. The links are metal. We talked about the rod ends already. Also worth noting, the receiver box here. It's not like a receiver box maybe like you would think or you're used to. It's not watertight, so water can still get in there. There's kind of lips, things like that. It's more maybe just to help from debris getting all over your receiver, because it does note on the box that this is waterproof. So the Hobbywing 1060s are generally waterproof. A brush motor, no problem. The servo, pretty standard. You can actually even see some of the gasketing on it, it looks like. And then presumably the receiver that's inside of there is also waterproof, which is good because we may be running this in the rain today. I do like seeing hard molded inner fenders. I think those look a lot better than Lexan style, and definitely much better than having no inner fenders at all. So these do now incorporate a rock light position on there. Since this isn't used for body mounting with the Velcro style anymore, they had the opportunity to add those rock light positions. Shocks look very familiar. The all aluminum construction there, they feel pretty decent. I didn't have any puddles of shock oil anywhere, and my axle housings don't look wet, so looks like a bonus as far as holding oil goes. Tires and wheels are always going to be a personal preference on style. We'll see how they do as far as performance goes, but you can either be an Interco fan or not. I personally have never been a huge Interco fan for their style, but I understand how people do, and these are a reasonable height. The beadlocks look pretty decent as well, so I think that overall is a nice fit for this truck. The last thing to note that I noticed with this is that this truck feels very heavy. I don't know why, it just feels heavy. So I'm gonna throw it on the scale real quick just to see if it is just messing with me or if it is indeed heavier than I was to expect. All right, we got our scale set at 0. Yeah, it's 8 pounds, 1.2 ounces without a battery in it. And that's heavy for a stock RTR vehicle. Before we take this out on the rocks, let's go over a couple of final details. I did forget to mention that this does come with side view mirrors, but you can see this one is already broken. It came broken in the package, and I see that they've included spares in the packaging for this because they are pretty brittle and they're also very thin. So I expect that you're going to break them off. You should expect that you're going to break them off. And if that's a big problem with you, take them off beforehand or just get used to it. For me, that's been a common theme with many RTRs, so I would normally just prefer they didn't have them so I didn't have to break them myself. And the last detail is that at the time of initial release of this vehicle is going to be listed for sale for $399, making it one of Redcat's more expensive offerings, not including the brushless Axe version of the Gen 8 that they released before. So they added some more features, and those features cost money. So you are seeing this come in a little bit higher than other options that they've released in the past. So at that price point, it does put them right in the midst of fighting with some of the big names and their options for trail trucks. But this may be one of the cheapest ones that comes with a 2-speed. So you have to weigh out all of your options. But with that, now I want to try and take this out on the rocks. Okay. So the problem I'm finding with the body system is that these little levers here to release the body are made to go forward to release it. So when you hit things on the bumpers enough times, I think it's just momentum moving these forward. And then the body, you don't notice that the body's loose, or the body becomes loose so quickly that it falls, well, either falls off or, opens up. So we're gonna take the height back to the Jeep now, but overall it did pretty well. It is top heavy. You can feel the weight. You're really gonna have to drive this thing. The stock tires did good, even on our damp rock here. Did fine in the sand as well. The 2-speed has a nice difference in ratio between first and second, making it super useful. If you're gonna have a 2-speed, make sure it makes a difference. But this is just generally how I drive. I'll do some slow crawling. I like to go fast as well though. So it's a real world use case for me.
in the end, you have to decide whether you think it's worth the $399 or not. We put close to 2,600 milliamps through it today. Not a ton, but enough to get a feel for it. The body mounting system is the only thing that I went from really liking to feeling like it needs a little bit of tweaking. Might just be a little bit more tension on those screws, or maybe it needs a little bit of a additional helper. Let's see what the on-the-fly shifting looks like. Grinding. We slow down, it found a gear. So you do need to let off. You have to do at least some off throttle shifts. You can still be moving, but come off throttle. There you go. I'd say it's a definite improvement over the Gen 8. And with that, it's a wrap on the Gen 9. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, comment what you feel about it. Is it worth $399 to you? Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.